Good evening and welcome to Sports Reports. It's been a particularly busy week of action. On Sunday morning, we saw the Rock's first ever sprint triathlon. That was a test event for the upcoming Island Games next year. There was the PSA Open in the Squash Club. That's the annual PSA Open. Plenty of action from that too. We've got all the details. There was rowing just over my shoulder. We'll begin, however, with football and a very, very busy week of European action.
Friday night saw the final of a mini tournament, with the prize being a spot in the UEFA Champions League qualifiers against Malmo. The first ever tournament of its kind, Lincoln Red Imps were up against Kosovan champions Drita FC, both teams having won 2-0 in their respective semi-finals on Tuesday evening to get here. Little was known about this side other than what could be gleaned from their performance a few days earlier. Lincoln knew to expect a physical approach with plenty of height and speed among the starting 11. Still, that was no excuse for what we'd see when Drita earned their first corner within a minute of kickoff. Side-footed in by Lidadon Lecce, nobody anywhere near him, and a very soft goal for Lincoln to concede so early on. And a few minutes later, Drita would show just how dangerous they were on the break. Within a few seconds of clearing a Lincoln cross, the fleet-footed Shabani chasing down a through ball which he seemed nailed on to catch, Soler missing the ball, but perhaps doing just enough to put the winger off. It was a threat Lincoln would have to deal with throughout the match, Drita defending very deep but able to move up the pitch in a flash. A good save by Soler preventing Drita from finishing off another lightning-quick counter. First clear-cut opportunity for Lincoln just after 20 minutes in, as Cipollina found himself in a bit of space but couldn't quite get enough on the ball to beat the keeper. The game had taken a clear shape by now, Lincoln controlling for the most part but not able to find a goal. Drita keeping things very simple, but were it not for a few impressive saves, Soler again pushing the ball wide there, Drita could have been even further ahead. As it stood, 1-0 to Drita as they headed into half-time. Lincoln continued their positive play in the second half, some nice flowing football on the hour mark as they worked their way up the pitch. Half-time substitute Pedro Corral with some good movement, but not quite able to whip a ball in to finish off the move. He did earn Lincoln a corner, however, and more than made amends for a poor cross towering above his marker to get the final touch on the ball. 1-1. Lincoln continued to dominate possession and make good use of their set pieces. Aranda glancing ahead a wide 15 minutes from time. He would have wanted to do better with that chance. As we approached the 90th, Lincoln threw everything they had into attack. Gaciado with a few half chances as the final whistle loomed. Heart-in-mouth moment as he raced through again in the 91st minute. Calls for a penalty immediately ringing out from the stands. It was definitely in the box. Gaciado certainly got a touch, but the referee felt the keeper got a foot to the ball as well. The final score 1-1 as we moved into extra time. Drita had already played a full 120 minutes of football just 3 days earlier against Santa Coloma, but it was the Lincoln players who looked to be struggling. A scrappy first half of extra time saw several stoppages and a few nasty tackles coming in from both sides. Drita had been steadily adding to their collection of yellows throughout, and a second for Gerbeshi as he was turned by Gaciado now gave Lincoln a one-man advantage. Aranda attempting to flick the ball in from the resulting free kick, didn't realise he had time. And then deep into injury time, a reflexive arm out on the line by Lopez, the referee with no choice but to send him off. A gamble which famously paid off for Luis Suarez in the World Cup 8 years ago. No such luck here as Lecce gets his second to put Drita back in front. Lincoln had a mountain to climb in these last 15 minutes as they came out for the second half. They started on the front foot and Aranda's cross found Hernandez, who couldn't keep his shot down, snatching at the ball there on his weaker foot. Lincoln's tired legs were starting to show, and with two less men on the pitch, the wide open spaces favoured the Kosovan outfit as they found themselves 3-on-1 with minutes to go. Heroics there from Soler to keep Lincoln in the game. He would be called on again and again, but he couldn't keep Drita's relentless attack at bay forever. Shabani with Drita's third goal, Lincoln with absolutely nothing left in the tank. It was game over for the Red Imps. A fourth goal deep into injury time just added insult to injury and made for a scoreline that flattered the visitors. Robin spoke to a crestfallen Anthony Hernandez after the match.
It's tough, man. It's truly heartbreaking. I mean, to go out in the second half of extra time like we did. I mean, a 4-1 doesn't really show at all how the game went. I thought we started off not on a good foot. They got an early goal. That conditioned the game quite a lot, because obviously they've not got much creativity, but they're quite solid in defence. So they just sat back. I mean, they had two very tight lines. We did well in the second half to get the goal back. It took us to extra time. I think in general we were the better team during the game. Then it just came down to wits, really. I mean, both teams were knackered. I mean, they were just sitting back. We were trying to get on the goal. We were the team who took the initiative. They got a lucky break, scored the 2-1. I mean, what can you do? Then from then on, you know, it was all or nothing for us. We had 5 men up front. Me and myself just try and linger, try and get any loose balls, and then from then, you know, they got 2 extra goals. Like I said at the beginning, heartbreaking. It's tough, really, to go out, especially when, you know, you look at the game after 120 minutes and you truly think that you're actually the better team on the pitch. But I mean, to be honest, we've got a couple of new signings who have gelled really, really well in the short spell of time that we've been together. It's exciting for us to, you know, continue this into Europa League and into the season next year.
Europa FC set off on their Europa League campaign, hosting FC Pristina last Thursday evening in the first of 2 legs. As with Lincoln and their own Kosovan counterparts, not too much was known about the visitors, and a slow start to the match suggested each team was getting a feel for the other as players sized up their opposite numbers. The transfer market's already seen plenty of movement in Gibraltar, Europa signing reinforcements early on in the form of centre-back Olmo and striker Enrique Carreño, formerly of Mons Galpe. But it's the return of Liam Walker that's likely to have Europa fans excited. The midfielder played a pivotal role in Europa's League and Cup double in 2017 and slotted right back into the starting 11 upon his return from Notts County. Things were fairly quiet to begin with, a cautious approach by both sides in the opening half hour, neither team willing to risk committing too many players forward. Europa did begin to find their rhythm as the half went on though. Pristina began to feel the pressure as the locals started to look more of a threat in the final third. And just as it looked like it may be a stalemate going into half-time, a throw into Carreño, clever touch over the top, and a clumsy tackle by the defender as he tried to get the ball out. Clear penalty for Europa. Carreño was quick to indicate that he wanted to finish off what he'd started. The second highest scorer in the league last season, Carreño stepped up, and a debut goal for Europa as he opens his account for the season. 1-0 the score at half-time. Pristina knew they'd have to up the tempo now and did just that, catching Europa a little flat-footed as the second half got underway. Mangenda snatching the ball away here in midfield and setting up Khalid Basit. Munoz too quick off his line though. A good save, but Europa not able to clear the ball completely. Belforte eventually penalised for a high boot in a dangerous area. Pristina looked likely to go direct, with only a couple of their players moving up into the box. But there wasn't much Munoz could do about that. Gorenica's ball finding the corner of the net to even up the scores. Europa responded well to the goal, pushing hard to retake the lead, but Pristina were happy to fall back and tighten up their defence now that they'd got what they wanted. Europa were frustrated up at the other end and reduced to half chances as they found themselves up against a wall of defence time and time again. With just minutes on the clock, a wonderful ball over the top found Carreño, a clever little header as he tries to squeeze through the defenders and calls for a penalty as he goes over. Unfortunately for Europa, the referee was having none of it. That would be the last bit of excitement in the game. 1-1 the final score. I spoke to Mustafa Yaya after the match.
Mustafa, 1-1 in the end, not quite the result you'd have been hoping for. Did Pristina offer a bit more of a threat than you'd anticipated?
Yeah, I think they took us by surprise, and we did everything we were supposed to do in the first half. Like, we were on top of the game, but we scored 1, and I think second half we lost a bit our heads, and we allowed them to play. That was the whole problem, allowing them to play, and I think when we go next week it's going to be something different. We're going to try to correct the few mistakes we did, especially in the second half, and try to press them more high to have the ball. And I think to have the ball is our power. And if you lose that, you've lost it. That was it, yeah.
They'll be taking the away goal back to Kosovo. They might be looking for the 0-0 draw. Do you think, are you confident you've got enough in your team to be able to turn the tie around?
Yeah, to be honest, I think for us it's a bad result because 1-1 is a good result for them, and they'll be looking for goalless draw, which we're not going to allow that to happen. And like I said, we are going there to fight to get a goal and to keep a clean sheet. That's the best. They are for sure hoping for a draw, but we are not going to allow that.
Elsewhere, St Joseph's travelled to the Faroe Islands, where they also came away with a 1-1 draw. They played B36 Tórshavn, going down to a penalty in the first half but equalising with one of their own just minutes later. They'll be playing the return leg tomorrow at the Victoria Stadium, kick-off at 6 p.m. Sunday 1st of July, and just a little over a year now until the 2019 Island Games get underway on the Rock. One event in particular always looked set to pose a unique challenge to organisers, and this weekend they passed a significant milestone as the Streets of Gibraltar saw their first ever official sprint triathlon. While shorter triathlons have been held on portions of the runway and along the east side in the past, this course would be a test run for next year's race and a chance for both local athletes and officials to get a taste of what will be in store for them at the Games. First up was a 750-metre swim, out towards the buoys, along the length of Eastern Beach and back into shore. Most of the competitors opting for full-body wetsuits, perhaps taking into account the numerous reports of jellies along Gibraltar's coast this summer. And they were off with a splash. While the sprint triathlon is only about a quarter of the length of its fully grown counterpart, it's still certainly nothing to be trifled with. Each leg was expected to take the top competitors around 20 minutes to complete, amounting to around an hour's worth of racing at high speeds. And of course this doesn't take into account several variables such as currents, temperatures, wind speeds and other factors beyond their control. The first of the competitors approached the shore, and it was Andrew Gordon first out of the water, stripping out of his swimming gear as he made his way to the transition area. Chris Walker wasn't too far behind him, and Robert Mather was third onto dry land as the racers picked up their bicycles and made their way up Sir Herbert Miles Road, past the Galeta and up towards Dudley Ward Tunnel. Gordon was still in the lead as he passed by Catlin Bay, but calamity for him as he would lose control and come off his bike at a speed bump just seconds later. He would pick himself up though. He and the rest of the competitors would complete 4 laps of this segment, amounting to 20 kilometres. The speed bumps, sharp curves and the hill which needs to be navigated both ways would prove a challenge to most. Combine this with the scenery on either side of the cycling section, and we can at least be sure that none of the visitors next year will find the course boring. Walkhead pushed out in front following Gordon's fall. Meanwhile, Beth and Berera led the way for the women. A steady stream of racers followed, and one by one they took their final turns into Eastern Beach, dropping off their bikes and beginning their 5-kilometre foot race. The running would consist of 4.5 laps up and down Eastern Beach Road, but also incorporating this tough little uphill section into the car park and then back down again. Walker had managed to stay out in front all this time, although there was a slight mix-up as he ran into the finishing area when he still had a lap to go. He managed to recover, get back on the course and hold on to first place. A finishing time of 1 hour and 11 seconds. Chris the overall winner, but Robert Mather pushing him all the way to the end, coming in less than 10 seconds later. Andrew recovered from his fall to hoist himself up into third. There's no guarantee that he'd have been able to keep Chris from top spot even if he hadn't fallen, but a shame nonetheless on what was otherwise a great success all rounds. Chris, of course, not only competitor but an organiser too, and as a veteran of countless other triathlons, I asked what he had made of his new local course.
Well, it's the first time I've ever raced in Gibraltar because in all other events I've been organising, so it's been a really nice change. As you know, the course is a test event for the next year's Iron Games. So the course is a tough course. It's the swim's fantastic. Eastern Beach was great this morning. The bike course is very technical, it's got some speed bumps, it's a bit hilly, tight turns, but it's all part and parcel of triathlon racing, and it's no different to any courses that we do all over the world. And then the run, obviously up and down Eastern Beach, is very draining in the sun, and then we've got that little detour up to the reclamation ground 4 times, which makes it extra tough.
So how do you say it compares to other courses that you run in your time?
Well, the courses vary, but in terms of a sprint distance or an Olympic distance race, most of the races are now multi-lap. The bike courses vary depending on the terrain. More often than not, they're a little bit flatter than this one, but of course the hills make it make it extra demanding, and that's what we want for next year's Island Games.
Bethan finished in a time of 1 hour and 15 minutes flat to secure first place in the women's race.
Congratulations, Bethan, first place. Not something that you're used to. How did you find running in Gibraltar?
I mean, it was great. The course was great. The supporters were fantastic. It's my second triathlon really ever, so it was an experience. I was quite nervous, but I'm pleased with the result.
On Saturday evening, 2 weeks of intense competition reached its conclusion in the annual PSA Gibraltar Open. It saw some of the best players from around the globe do battle for the top prize of $5,000, plus, of course, the title. Before the main final, fans gathered to enjoy the amateur and women's finals first. In the amateurs, our very own Anthony Brindle took on the Army's James Burke. The visitor proved tough competition, very vocal, played to the crowd as often as possible, perhaps in an attempt to put Anthony off his game. It didn't work. He showed focus, stamina and brilliant shot selection. It was all too much to handle, and it was great to see the local 29-year-old grind his way to a 3-0 victory. So an excellent performance, but after the game, he admitted being interviewed was a much bigger challenge for him. But nevertheless, he was kind enough to share his thoughts. So Anthony, first of all, congratulations on the win at 3-0 in the end. Talk me through the game. It perhaps wasn't as easy as 3-0 might suggest.
Yeah, I played him a week ago actually, lost 3-1, so it was quite nice to turn that around. Yeah, it was an easy game. There were a few decisions with the referees, but I was pretty happy with the way I played. I felt definitely played better than I did a week ago, and probably playing a week ago helped. But yeah, no, it was good overall.
He was very vocal. He played to the crowd a lot. Did that distract you in any way? Was that an extra hurdle to overcome, or did you just sort of think, right, play my game? And
yeah, no, I think it probably helped in a way. I think he probably liked his game suits more of a rhythm, so that little bit of chat broke up the rhythm. I think it actually helped me more than anything else, and I managed to keep my concentration, which I think he lost in the end, his concentration. So yeah, probably didn't impact things.
Perhaps a slightly tough question to answer, but what is your style when it comes to the court?
So fairly containing, so trying to keep things tight and away from my opponents so they can't attack me, and then obviously trying to step forward and attack when you get the chance. But yeah, generally like trying to contain the other person.
Next to the women's final, involving 26-year-old Abby Hicks from Wales, ranked 231 in the world, against the diminutive Roxy Keshavas of England, ranked 125 in the world. Two very likeable characters both did their best to charm the local supporters on side before they took to the court. An even game in the end, which saw momentum swing either way, but it was Abby's consistency that gave her the edge, forcing the errors from her opponent, and the four-time Welsh national champion went on to win 3-1. And so to the big one, the PSA Gibraltar Open final between the Austrian Achille Reimann, 117th in the world rankings, against the German Valentin Rapp, 143rd in the world, playing in blue. It was an intriguing matchup to see the 4th and 5th seed for this tournament going head-to-head. Reimann burst out the blocks to take the first two sets comfortably, 11-5, 11-4. The third went right down to the wire, but it was Rapp who scraped it 12-10 to give himself a glimmer of hope. Although in the fourth, the 32-year-old Reimann rediscovered his best form to win 11-3, the Austrian's experience really told, composed under pressure, a final score of 3-1 to claim the 2018 Gibraltar Open title. And we'll be hoping for similar excitement same time next year.
Friday before last saw the grand finale of the Touch Rugby Challenge Cup. Contested by 10 teams, I spoke to Gibraltar Rugby's Kim Chang, the general manager taking on the role of organiser for this tournament as well.
Week 4 of the tournament, final day. Would you say it's been a success?
No, it's been a huge success. It's the 4th year that we've run the tournament now. Every year it gets bigger and better. We've had 10 teams and probably over 100 people participate in these 4 weeks.
So how would you say things have progressed since the first year? We've seen a lot of new faces. Are we getting repeat people coming down here to play again?
Yeah, we get the regulars that turn up, and some of the regular teams always turn up and play. And a lot of them, say like the accountancy firms like Deloitte and PwC, are people who don't, their only exposure to rugby is touch rugby. So we get a lot of them come back because it's fun and it's a mixed sport. So yeah, we get a lot of return ones, and then we get some new teams turn up as well.
Definitely a lot of fun. Of course, you're involved with the Gibraltar rugby team. This seems to be, I mean, you can't get away from the physicality of rugby. So do you feel like this is a good introduction for those who are not quite sure about being thumped around the fields?
No, this is a perfect introduction to the non-contact game. So you still got the skills of rugby and the teamwork, but for those who don't want to participate in contact rugby, like if you're like myself, I used to play 15-a-side rugby, but these days I'd rather just play touch rugby. A little bit of fitness, so for me this is great, and for a lot of people this is a perfect way to keep fit and still have fun.
And you were mentioning earlier that it's not just a stepping stone to rugby or a way to keep fit, a sport in its own right, one which you've played at the highest level, it seems. So is there hope that perhaps one day Gibraltar will be playing at international tournaments?
Yeah, so touch rugby is played at European Championships, World Cups, so it's a sport in its own. But Gibraltar Rugby have taken touch as one of their other variants, sevens rugby, ladies rugby, so they're trying to grow the game. So hopefully one day we'll have a Gibraltar team representing Gibraltar in the European Championships and hopefully the World Cup.
In the end, Into Adventure were too strong for inline framing. 3-0 the scoreline in the decisive game. Then the players all took to the stands for a short presentation ceremony, plenty of pizza and a couple of refreshments.
On Saturday morning, the local rowing season drew to a close. The illustrious Garbarino Trophy was the prize, and it went down to the final race weekend to decide it. In case you're unfamiliar, the rivalry between Galpe and the Med stretches back years and years. It was in the 70s that the relationship turned so sour that they stopped competing against one another point blank. In the late 80s, the Gibraltar Amateur Rowing Association, commonly known as GARA, was formed in order to get things back on track and create some local competition once again. That saw the birth of the Garbarino Trophy, and now, 3 decades later, it is undoubtedly the top prize here on the Rock. It's been the Red of Galpe that have dominated in recent years, and on Saturday they claimed the title for a 6th consecutive season. There were 20 points on offer. They went into the series 19 points ahead, so it would have taken somewhat of a miracle for the Meds to overturn things. It wasn't to be. Galpe won 11 of them to make absolutely sure of the victory. So, tough times for the Med. They've won the trophy just once in the last 20 years. You'd think something needs to change. Galpe continue to impress both locally and abroad. Team captain Mark Lett was keen to stress there is no secret to their success, just good old-fashioned hard work.
Season's been great for all rowers. We've successfully now won the Garbarino 6 times in a row. That's 19 times the last 20 years. The rowers have put a lot of hard work in. Coaches have trained up all the athletes immensely. The club as a whole, even the members, have supported everyone. This season we've won by quite a big margin, probably over about 30 points. We need to look at the calculations now. Compared to last season, it was very tight. Taking it down to last weekend, we only won it by 5. As a whole, the whole season's been great. We've been competing abroad quite a bit. We've been competing almost every other weekend in Sevilla, in the Campeonato Nacional, and we've come back with quite a few medals. And we also competed in Belgium, where we came back with a few medals as well. So on the whole, it's been quite a successful year.
Tell us about the Garbarino Trophy in particular, that sort of encompasses all sorts of mini-leagues in which you've been entirely dominant pretty much, apart from the Yola League. The Yola League, you guys had a little bit of trouble.
Correct. The Garbarino whole is every single race combines into one. So let's say like a whole calendar. So it combines the Yola races, the fours, the small boats, that's singles, pairs, doubles, all sorts. The Yola League was taken down to the last weekend where we lost it to the Meds. It was taken down to the senior cruise between the first and second cruise. It was a team event. They ended up pipping us in the last race and they won it by a point. But on a whole, obviously, we've taken away the Garbarino, which is what's important to us. And more importantly for us as well now in 2 weeks' time is competing abroad in the Nationals.
We'll get onto that in just a second, but just explain the standings, you guys. Although it did come down to this final weekend of competitive rowing, It was virtually tied up already, barring a huge calamity from you guys, wasn't it?
Last weekend was the second Small Boats League where we were already 19 points ahead. Obviously the way the point structure works, this weekend there were 20 races to row, so we were 19 points ahead with 20 points still outstanding, so technically we needed 1 point today to snip the win, where I think we've won 11 today, they've taken 3. So in a whole, a good 30, maybe 40 points ahead.
Fast forward 2 weeks, back off to Nottingham.
Off to Nottingham, the juniors off to the British Nationals. About selected 10 rowers are going. They're competing in singles, pairs and doubles.
Expecting medals?
We are expecting medals. We're hoping our J18 double of Julian Vinales and Jack Pryor to come back with a medal. They luckily won a bronze last year. They were only aged 17 at the time, one of them was 16. So this year, being a year older, now competing in their category, we're hoping for them to snip a medal. We're also hoping for the other junior girls to come back with their medals. It's tough competition over there, but the athletes have put a lot of hard work in this season. They've proved it here, they've proved it in Sevilla that they can win, in Belgium. So the British Nationals is in the next step up. Obviously, British Nationals is where you can get scouts to row for GB. It's quite high standards, so we're hoping they can perform there and bring back a few medals.
So that's your lot. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for this week. Join us same time next week for the latest sporting news from myself, Ian and John. It's good night.